The penthouse Prince Jackson Reed stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows of his Manhattan penthouse office, surveying the city below like a modern-day king. At 32, he had built a real estate empire worth over $3 billion, and he wore his success like armor. His tailored Italian suits cost more than most people's monthly rent, and his watch collection could fund a small school. But money had done something dangerous to Jackson. It had convinced him that people were disposable, that loyalty could be bought, and that kindness was a weakness he could not afford. The invisible woman 20 floors below Jackson's office. Amelia Brooks sat at her desk, organizing his chaotic schedule with the precision of a master conductor. For 4 years, she had been Jackson's executive assistant, managing everything from his business meetings to his dry cleaning. She arrived before dawn and left after dark, ensuring his life ran smoothly while her own remained frozen in time. Amelia was 28, but looked younger. Hidden behind oversized glasses and conservative gray suits that seemed designed to make her disappear, her light brown hair stayed pulled back in a tight bun, and she rarely spoke unless spoken to. To Jackson and everyone else in the office, she was simply part of the furniture. But Amelia Brooks had not always been invisible. The wicked plan that Tuesday afternoon, Jackson lounged in the private dining room of the Manhattan Club. Surrounded by his usual circle of wealthy friends, they were all cut from the same cloth, successful, arrogant, and constantly searching for the next thrill in their overprivileged lives. "I need something entertaining," Jackson announced, swirling his glass of bourbon. "The Global Hearts Charity Gala is next week, and these events bore me to death." His friend Thomas Blackwood, heir to a pharmaceutical fortune, leaned forward with interest. "What did you have in mind?" Jackson's green eyes glinted with mischief. "I'm going to invite my assistant, little Amelia Brooks, the mouse who hides behind her desk." The table erupted in laughter. "You cannot be serious," said Richard Vail, a tech billionaire. "Why would you waste a $20,000 ticket on your secretary?" Jackson smiled cruelly. "Because it will be hilarious. Can you imagine her showing up in some discount store dress, completely out of place among Manhattan's elite? She will be so uncomfortable that she will want to disappear, and we will all have front row seats to the show." The men around the table began placing bets on how quickly Amelia would embarrass herself. Would she use the wrong fork? Trip in cheap heels? Say something completely inappropriate to a diplomat? Jackson felt a rush of satisfaction. This would be his masterpiece of entertainment. The invitation back at the office. Amelia was reviewing quarterly reports when Jackson's voice came through the intercom. "Amelia, come to my office immediately." She saved her work and walked down the hallway with measured steps. For years had taught her to expect anything from Jackson Reed. She knocked twice on the heavy oak door. "Enter," his voice commanded. Jackson sat behind his massive desk, a self-satisfied smile playing on his lips. The afternoon sun streaming through the windows cast him in golden light, making him look like a magazine cover come to life. Amelia had to admit, despite his terrible personality, Jackson Reed was devastatingly handsome. "Sit down." "Amelia," he said, gesturing to the chair across from him. She sat, folding her hands in her lap, and waited. Jackson picked up a cream-colored envelope embossed with gold lettering. "I have been thinking about your dedication to this company. For years of impeccable service deserves recognition." Amelia's eyebrows rose slightly. In 4 years, Jackson had never acknowledged her work beyond demanding more of it. "This," he continued, sliding the envelope across the desk, "is an invitation to the Global Hearts Charity Gala. It is the most exclusive event of the year. 500 of the world's most powerful people will be there, and I would like you to accompany me as my guest." Amelia stared at the invitation, her mind racing. Something felt wrong. Jackson Reed did not do kind gestures. Every action had a purpose, usually one that benefited only himself. "Mr. Reed, I don't know what to say," she replied carefully. "Say yes," he pressed, his smile widening. "Consider it a bonus for your hard work. You deserve a night among the elite." The way he said elite made her stomach turn. She heard the mockery hidden beneath his words, saw the gleam of amusement in his eyes. Amelia understood in that moment exactly what this was. She was not being honored. She was being set up. The hidden truth that evening, Amelia sat in her modest Brooklyn apartment, staring at the invitation. The apartment was small, but carefully maintained, with furniture that spoke of better times. A few pieces of expensive artwork hung on the walls, remnants of a life she no longer lived. Amelia walked to her bedroom closet and pushed aside her work clothes. In the back, protected by garment bags, hung dresses she had not worn in years. Designer gowns from Paris, Milan, and New York. Shoes that cost thousands of dollars. Jewelry that once adorned her neck at similar galas. She pulled out a photo album from the top shelf. The pictures showed a different Amelia. Confident, radiant, dressed in couture. Standing beside her father at charity events and business conferences, Amelia Brooks had once been Amelia Montgomery Brooks, daughter of Richard Montgomery, one of New York's most respected investment bankers. She had graduated from Yale with honors, worked at a prestigious consulting firm, and was being groomed to take over her father's company. Then everything collapsed. 5 years ago, her father's business partner had embezzled millions, framing Richard Montgomery in the process. The scandal destroyed their family. Her father had a heart attack from the stress and died before his name could be cleared. Her mother, unable to cope with the loss and shame, moved to Europe. Amelia was left alone, her family's fortune gone, her reputation in ruins by association. She had changed her name slightly, ditched her designer wardrobe, and taken the first job she could find that did not require references from her old life. She became invisible to survive. The phone call, her phone rang. Breaking her reflection, it was Claire Hartley, her only real friend from her old life. Claire had stuck by her through everything. Amelia. I just heard through the grapevine that Jackson Reed invited you to the Global Hearts Gala. Please tell me you said no. Amelia sank onto her couch. I said I would think about it. Do you know what he is planning? Claire's voice was sharp with concern. I have a pretty good idea, Amelia admitted. He wants to humiliate me. Make me his entertainment for the evening. Claire was silent for a moment. Then her voice changed, becoming fierce and determined. Then we give him a show he will never forget. What do you mean? Amelia, you have been hiding for 5 years. You took a job beneath your qualifications. You made yourself invisible because you were hurting. But Jackson Reed just gave you the perfect opportunity for something better than revenge. He gave you a chance to reclaim yourself. Amelia felt something stir inside her chest, something that had been sleeping for a very long time. I'm listening, she said quietly. Come to my studio tomorrow after work, Claire commanded, and bring those garment bags from your closet. It is time to remind New York society who Amelia Montgomery Brooks really is. After hanging up, Amelia looked at herself in the mirror. For the first time in years, she allowed herself to imagine being visible again. Not as Jackson's assistant, not as someone's employee, as herself. The decision the next morning. Amelia arrived at Jackson's office to give him her answer. He looked up from his computer with that same cruel smile. Have you made your decision about the gala? Amelia met his eyes directly, something she rarely did. Yes, Mr. Reed, I accept your invitation. Thank you for the opportunity. Jackson's smile widened. He thought he had one. Excellent. The car will pick you up at 7 next Saturday. Wear something nice, of course, Amelia replied, her voice calm and professional, as she walked back to her desk. Amelia felt different, lighter. For 4 years she had accepted Jackson's casual cruelty, his dismissive attitude, his complete lack of respect. She had told herself it did not matter, that she just needed the job. But Claire was right. Jackson had made a critical mistake. He had given her an invitation to his world, thinking she would embarrass herself. He had no idea he was inviting a woman who had been born into that world, who knew its rules better than he did. Jackson Reed wanted a show, and Amelia Brooks was going to give him one he would never forget. The strategy session Saturday morning arrived with crisp autumn air sweeping through Brooklyn. Amelia stood outside Claire Hartley's private studio in Soho, clutching the garment bags that held remnants of her former life. The building was Old warehouse converted into a creative space where Claire ran her exclusive styling business for Manhattan's elite. Claire opened the door before Amelia could knock, pulling her inside with urgent energy. "Let me see what you brought," Claire said, spreading the garment bags across her massive work table. As Claire unzipped each bag, her eyes widened. A burgundy Valentino gown, a midnight blue Dior dress, an emerald Versace number that shimmered under the studio lights. These were not department store purchases. These were investment pieces from fashion houses that most people only saw in magazines. "Amelia, these are incredible," Claire breathed, "but we are not using any of them." Amelia looked confused. "What do you mean?" Claire turned to face her, hands on hips. "Because Jackson has probably already told his horrible friends that you will show up in something cheap and outdated. You arrive in a dress from 5 years ago, even a designer one. They will find something to criticize. We need to make an entrance that leaves absolutely no room for mockery. Claire, I cannot afford a new designer gown. You know my situation?" Claire smiled mysteriously. "Leave that to me. I've been styling New York's wealthiest women for 6 years. I have connections. And more importantly, I have leverage. Several designers owe me favors. Big ones." She walked to her phone and began making calls. Amelia listened as Claire spoke rapid fire to contacts in Paris, Milan, and New York, switching effortlessly between English, French, and Italian. "Done," Claire announced 15 minutes later. "We have 3 options being sent over tomorrow. Exclusive pieces that have not been shown publicly yet. It's a revelation while they waited for coffee to brew." Claire studied Amelia with the analytical eye of someone who understood transformation. "We need to talk about what this really is," Claire said seriously. "This is not just about looking beautiful or proving Jackson wrong. This is about you reclaiming the woman you buried 5 years ago." Amelia looked away, but Claire continued. "You took your father's death in that scandal, and you used it as an excuse to disappear. You punished yourself for something that was not your fault. You accepted a job where you were treated as invisible because some part of you believed you deserved to be invisible." The words hit Amelia like cold water. Her throat tightened. "Jackson Reed is an arrogant fool," Claire went on. "But he accidentally gave you a gift. He gave you permission to step back into the light. The question is, are you ready to actually do it? Because if you walk into that gala as the real Amelia Montgomery Brooks, you cannot go back to being the invisible assistant on Monday morning." Amelia sat in silence, processing the weight of Claire's words. She was right. This was not about one night of revenge. This was about choosing to be seen again, with all the vulnerability and risk that required. "I am terrified," Amelia admitted quietly. "Good," Claire responded. "That means it matters. Now, let me tell you what I discovered about your dear boss." The investigation. Claire pulled out her laptop and opened several browser tabs. "After you told me about the invitation, I did some research. I wanted to know exactly who we were dealing with." She turned the screen toward Amelia. Articles about Jackson Reed filled the display. Business acquisitions, charity donations, society page photos. But Claire pointed to a different kind of article buried deeper in the search results. Jackson Reed's company acquired 3 smaller real estate firms in the last 2 years. Each time he'd promised to keep the staff, then fired 90% of them within 6 months. There are lawsuits, complaints, stories of people whose careers he destroyed without a second thought. Amelia read through the articles, her stomach turning. She had processed some of these acquisitions herself, filing the paperwork, never questioning what happened afterward. "He is not just arrogant," Claire said. "He is cruel. And he gets away with it because he is wealthy and charming. People excuse his behavior because he donates to the right charities and shows up at the right parties." Another tab showed Jackson at various social events, always with a different beautiful woman on his arm. Models, actresses, socialites. Never the same one twice. "He treats women as accessories," Claire observed. "Something to display for a night and discard. He thought you would be his latest prop, except this time the joke would be on you instead of with you." Amelia felt anger building in her chest. Not just for herself, but for all the people Jackson had treated as disposable. "There is something else," Claire said, pulling up a financial blog. "There are rumors that Jackson's company is not as solid as it appears. Several investors have quietly pulled out. He has been using his personal charm and public image to keep confidence high, but insiders say he might be in trouble. Amelia asked. Claire smiled. One of my clients is married to a venture capitalist. She tells me things when I do her hair. The wealthy talk freely around people they consider servants. They forget we have ears and brains. The preparation over the next few days. Claire's studio became a war room. Promise dresses arrived in unmarked boxes, each more stunning than the last. But Claire insisted they focus on more than just appearance. You need to remember who you were, Claire said. The Amelia, who graduated top of her class from Yale. The Amelia who could discuss international markets and corporate strategy with the best of them. That woman is still inside you. Spent hours reviewing current business news, political developments, and cultural trends. Amelia realized how much she had let her mind atrophy, focusing only on Jackson's schedule and needs. Claire brought in her makeup artist, Paolo, and her hairstylist, Jean-Luc. Both had worked with royalty and celebrities. They studied Amelia's face and hair like artists approaching a masterpiece. She has incredible bone structure, Paolo observed. Why has she been hiding it? Because she forgot she was allowed to be beautiful, Claire answered. Jean-Luc lifted Amelia's hair, examining the natural waves she always pulled back. This hair is extraordinary, thick, healthy, with natural highlights. We will create something elegant but modern. Classic beauty with an edge. The dress decision Thursday. Evening, Claire called Amelia back to the studio for the final dress selection. The three options hung on mannequins, each more breathtaking than the last. The first was a white Givenchy gown with architectural lines and subtle crystals. Elegant and modern. The second was a black Chanel dress with a plunging neckline and vintage Hollywood glamour. The third was a deep sapphire blue Carolina Herrera gown with a fitted bodice and flowing skirt. Classic, sophisticated, and the exact color of Amelia's eyes. Try the blue one, Claire instructed. Amelia slipped into the gown, and the room fell silent. The color made her eyes luminous. The cut emphasized her figure without being revealing. The fabric moved like water, elegant and effortless. That is the one, Claire said softly. You look like royalty. Paolo and Jean-Luc nodded in agreement. But it was Amelia's reflection that mattered most. For the first time in 5 years, she looked in the mirror and recognized herself. Not the hidden assistant, not the grieving daughter, but the woman she had been before tragedy struck. Tears welled in her eyes. Hey, no crying, Claire said gently, but she was tearing up too. We have not done the eye makeup yet. The final piece Friday afternoon, Claire revealed the last element of the plan. We need to establish your identity before the gala. Jackson thinks you are just his assistant, a nobody. We need to remind New York society who you really are. Claire had contacted 3 society journalists and given them carefully worded tips about Amelia Montgomery Brooks returning to the social scene after a 5-year absence. Ow. She framed it as a comeback story, the daughter clearing her father's name and re-emerging from grief. By tomorrow night, the right people will know exactly who you are, Claire explained. Jackson will walk in expecting to humiliate a nobody. He will be arriving with a woman who has more legitimate social standing than he does. Amelia felt nervous energy coursing through her. What if I fail? What if I get there and freeze? What if I prove Jackson right? Claire took both of Amelia's hands in hers. Listen to me. You have survived the worst 5 years of your life with grace and dignity. You managed a multi-billion-dollar CEO's entire existence without a single mistake. You have more strength than Jackson Reed will ever understand. Tomorrow night, you are not proving anything to him. You are reminding yourself of your own worth. The night before, Saturday morning arrived too quickly. Amelia barely slept, her mind racing with possibilities and fears. At noon, she arrived at Claire's studio for the transformation. Paolo and Jean-Luc were already there, along with 2 assistants. The studio had been transformed into a luxury salon. We have 8 hours, Claire announced. Let us create magic. The process was methodical and meditative. A facial to make her skin glow, a massage to release tension. Jean-Luc carefully trimmed and styled her hair, creating soft waves that framed her face perfectly. Paolo applied makeup with the precision. of a master painter, enhancing her natural features rather than masking them. As the hours passed, Amelia felt herself changing from the inside out. Each step of the preparation was like shedding an old skin, revealing something stronger underneath. When she finally stepped into the Carolina Herrera gown, everyone in the studio stopped working. The transformation was complete. Claire fastened a simple diamond necklace around Amelia's neck, an heirloom piece that Amelia had managed to keep from the family collection. "How do you feel?" Claire asked. Amelia looked at her reflection. The woman staring back was powerful, elegant, and ready. "I feel like myself again," she answered. A knock on the door interrupted the moment. Claire opened it to reveal a driver in a formal uniform. "Miss Montgomery Brooks, your car is ready." Amelia took a deep breath. This was it. No turning back. Claire squeezed her hand. "Remember, you are not going there to impress Jackson Reed. You are going there to reclaim your life. Now go show Manhattan what they have been missing." Amelia walked out of the studio and into the waiting car, a sleek black Mercedes that Claire had arranged. As they drove toward Manhattan, Amelia felt her confidence growing with each mile. Jackson Reed thought he was orchestrating her humiliation. He had no idea he was about to face the shock of his life. The game was about to begin, and this time, Amelia held all the cards. The arrival of the Mercedes pulled up to the Metropolitan Museum of Art at exactly 8 o'clock. The Global Hearts Charity Gala was being held in the museum's Temple of Dender, a stunning venue where ancient Egyptian architecture met modern Manhattan glamour. Hundreds of guests were already inside, but the red carpet still buzzed with arriving celebrities and dignitaries. Amelia could see photographers lining both sides of the entrance, their cameras flashing constantly. Her heart pounded, but she forced herself to breathe steadily. This was the world she had been born into. She belonged here. The driver opened her door, and Amelia stepped out into the cool evening air. The effect was immediate. Photographers, who had been casually shooting arriving guests, suddenly snapped to attention. The sapphire blue gown caught the lights perfectly, and Amelia's transformation was so complete that several reporters actually checked their lists, trying to identify her. "Miss Montgomery Brooks." One photographer called out, recognizing her from Claire's strategic media tips. "Welcome back. Can we get a photo?" Amelia turned gracefully, allowing them several shots. She remembered how to stand, how to angle her body, how to smile for cameras. It all came back like muscle memory, inside the museum. Jackson Reed stood near the entrance to the Temple of Dender, checking his watch. It was already 8:15, and his little assistant had not arrived. He smirked, imagining that she had probably gotten cold feet or could not find anything appropriate to wear. His friend, Thomas Blackwood, appeared at his elbow. "Still waiting for your entertainment?" "She will show up," Jackson said confidently. "She is too obedient not to." "Jackson, you need to see this," Richard Vale interrupted. Staring at his phone, he held up his screen, showing the live feed from the red carpet. A stunning woman in blue was posing for photographers, looking every inch like royalty. "Who is that?" Thomas asked. "I do not recognize her." Richard scrolled through the accompanying text. "Amelia Montgomery Brooks, daughter of Richard Montgomery, the investment banker. Apparently, she has been out of society for 5 years, and this is her grand return." Jackson barely glanced at the screen. Good for her. "But where's my assistant? She should have been here by now." Thomas and Richard exchanged confused looks, but said nothing. The entrance Amelia handed her wrap to the coat check and took a moment to gather herself. Beyond the doorway, she could hear the orchestra playing, the sound of conversation and laughter. 500 of the world's most powerful and wealthy people were in that room. She had spent 5 years avoiding this world. Now she was walking back into it on her own terms. Amelia stepped through the doorway into the Temple of Dender. The scene before her was magnificent. The ancient temple was lit dramatically, reflected in the pool of water that surrounded it. Round tables dressed in ivory linens filled the space, each topped with elaborate floral arrangements. Waiters circulated with champagne and hors d'oeuvres. Several heads turned as she entered, including those of society journalists who had received Claire's tips. Recognition rippled through certain sections of the room. Amelia scanned the crowd, looking for Jackson. She spotted him near the bar, his back to the entrance, talking to his usual group of friends. She took a glass of champagne from a passing waiter and walked calmly in his direction. The shocked Jackson was in the middle of explaining to Thomas why his prank was going to be hilarious when a woman's voice spoke behind him. "Good evening, Mr. Reed. Thank you for the invitation." He turned around, an automatic smile on his face, expecting to deliver some condescending greeting to his dowdy assistant. The smile froze. The woman standing before him was breathtaking. Sapphire blue gown that hugged a figure he had never noticed. Rich brown hair styled in elegant waves. Eyes that seemed to glow with an inner light. She carried herself with the poise of someone born to wealth and status. For a full 5 seconds, Jackson's brain refused to make the connection. Then recognition hit him like a physical blow. "Amelia," he choked out. "Hello, Jackson," she replied, using his first name deliberately for the first time ever. "I hope I am not too late." Thomas and Richard stared at her, then at Jackson, then back at her. The confusion on their faces was almost comical. Jackson's mind raced, trying to reconcile the invisible assistant he had planned to humiliate with this stunning woman who looked like she could grace the cover of Vogue. "You look different," he managed, his usual smooth confidence completely shattered. "Do I?" Amelia replied innocently. "Perhaps you've just never really looked before." The barb hit its mark. Jackson felt heat creeping up his neck. Before he could respond, another voice joined the conversation. "Excuse me, but I could not help overhearing. Did you say Montgomery Brooks?" A distinguished man in his 50s approached their group. Jackson recognized him as William Hartford, a legendary Wall Street investor.
"Yes."
Amelia replied, extending her hand. "Amelia Montgomery Brooks," Richard's daughter, William said warmly, taking her hand. "My dear, I am so glad to see you back in circulation. Your father was one of the finest men I ever worked with. The way he was treated was an absolute travesty." "Thank you, Mr. Hartford. That means a great deal. You must let me introduce you around. There are several people here who knew your father and would be delighted to see you." Jackson watched in stunned silence as William Hartford, a man he had been trying to get a meeting with for 2 years, led Amelia away into the crowd. Thomas let out a low whistle. Well, that did not go as planned. "Shut up," Jackson snapped. The revelation, as William introduced Amelia around the room, she felt layers of her old life settling back onto her shoulders. These people had known her as a child, as a young woman rising in the business world. Some had attended her father's funeral. Others had quietly sent notes of support during the scandal. She was not a stranger here. She was a returning member of a tribe that had temporarily lost her. "Amelia, you must tell me what you have been doing," said Catherine Price, a prominent art collector. "We heard you went abroad," Amelia deflected gracefully. "I needed time to heal and to gain some perspective. I have been working in corporate management, learning the business from the ground up." It was not a lie, just a creative framing of the truth. Across the room, Jackson watched her with a mixture of shock, anger, and something else he could not quite identify. Every time he looked over, Amelia was surrounded by important people, laughing, conversing, completely at ease in a world he had assumed she could never navigate. Thomas and Richard had stopped pretending this was funny. The prank had backfired spectacularly. "Did you know who she was?" Richard asked quietly. "No," Jackson admitted, his jaw tight. "Her resume said Amelia Brooks." I never looked deeper." "Apparently she has been your assistant for 4 years, Thomas observed. "And you had no idea you were employing someone from one of New York's old money families?" Jackson felt something unfamiliar and unpleasant. Shame, the interventionee new figure approached. Amelia's group. Gabriel Santos, a Brazilian entrepreneur who had built a sustainable coffee empire worth billions. He was known for his business acumen, his philanthropy, and his reputation as one of the most eligible bachelors in the Americas. "Miss Montgomery Brooks," he said with a warm smile and slight accent, "I have been hearing your name all evening." Gabriel Santos. "I had the privilege of meeting your father once at a trade conference in São Paulo." Amelia shook his hand, noting his genuine warmth. Unlike the predatory interest she sometimes saw in wealthy men's eyes, Gabriel's gaze was respectful and curious. "Mr. Santos, your work in sustainable agriculture is remarkable. I have read several articles about your cooperative model." Gabriel's eyes lit up. "You are familiar with my work?" "I try to stay informed about innovative business practices," Amelia replied. They fell into easy conversation about economic development, fair trade practices, and the future of global commerce. Gabriel was impressed by her knowledge and insight, asking questions that showed genuine interest in her thoughts. Across the room, Jackson watched this interaction with growing frustration. He drained his whiskey and ordered another. "You should probably go talk to her," Thomas suggested. Before Santos sweeps her off to Brazil, Jackson wanted to, but for the first time in his life, he felt uncertain about how to approach a woman. Amelia was not some model or socialite he could charm with his wealth and looks. She was something else entirely, something he had completely misjudged. The confrontation as dinner was announced, and guests began moving toward their assigned tables. Jackson finally found his courage. He intercepted Amelia near the seating chart. "Amelia, can we talk privately for a moment?" She turned to face him, her expression unreadable. "Of course, Mr. Reed." "It is Jackson," he said. "You called me Jackson before, did I? How familiar of me." They moved to a quieter corner of the hall, away from the crowd. Jackson ran his hand through his hair, a gesture of nervousness that Amelia had never seen before. "Why did you not tell me?" he asked. "Tell you what? Who you are. Your background. Your family." Amelia's eyes hardened slightly. "You never asked? In 4 years, you never once asked me about my life, my education, my background. To you, I was just the assistant, the person who managed your calendar and fetched your coffee." The truth of her words struck him like a slap. "I looked at your resume," he protested weakly. He looked at the resume of Amelia Brooks, a name I use professionally to avoid the complications of my family history. "But you never looked at me, Jackson. You never saw me as a person. I was furniture to you, useful, functional, and completely invisible." She was right, and they both knew it. Tonight was supposed to be a joke, he admitted quietly. "I invited you here too. To humiliate you? To entertain myself and my friends by watching you struggle in a world you did not belong to." "I know," Amelia said calmly. "I figured out your plan the moment you invited me." Jackson looked at her in shock. "You knew?" "Of course I knew. You are not as subtle as you think. I heard you on the phone with the event planner asking for a prominent table placement. I saw the smirk on your face when you handed me the invitation. I have worked for you for 4 years, Jackson. I know how you think. Then why did you come?" Amelia met his eyes directly. "Because I was tired of being invisible. You gave me an excuse to stop hiding. You thought you were setting me up for humiliation, but you actually gave me permission to be myself again." Jackson felt the ground shifting beneath him. Everything he thought he understood about this situation was wrong. "I am sorry," he said. And for once in his life, he meant it completely. "I have treated you terribly, not just tonight, but for 4 years. You have been the best assistant I have ever had, and I took you completely for granted." "You did," Amelia agreed. "But do you know what the worst part was? It was not the long hours or the thankless work. It was feeling like I had to make myself small to be acceptable. Like I had to hide my intelligence, my education, my entire history, just to keep a job." "Why did you?" Jackson asked. "Why take a job so far beneath your capabilities?" Amelia looked away, and for the first time that evening, her confidence wavered. "Because 5 years ago, my entire life fell apart. My father was destroyed by a scandal that was not his fault. He died before his name could be cleared. I was left with nothing but grief and shame. I needed to disappear for a while, to figure out who I was without my family name, without my father's legacy. I took a job as an assistant because it was safe, anonymous. I thought it was what I needed. And now," Jackson asked softly, "I realized I was punishing myself. Accepting mistreatment because some part of me believed I deserved it?" She looked back at him. "But I do not deserve it, Jackson. I never did." The realization before Jackson could respond, Gabriel Santos appeared, politely interrupting. I apologize for the intrusion, but I wanted to ask Miss Montgomery Brooks if she would join me at my table for dinner. Several colleagues are eager to meet her. I would be delighted. Thank you for the invitation, Mr. Reed. It turned out to be exactly what I needed. Just not in the way you planned. As Gabriel escorted Amelia toward his table, Jackson stood frozen, watching her walk away, for the first time in his 32 years. Jackson Reed understood what it meant to lose something precious before he ever realized its value. Amelia was not just beautiful, though. She was stunning. She was not just intelligent, though her mind was clearly brilliant. She was genuine, principled, and possessed a quiet strength that came from surviving genuine hardship. She was everything he had convinced. Himself did not matter. Everything he had trained himself not to see, and he had spent 4 years treating her as disposable. Thomas appeared at his shoulder. That did not go how you expected. It did not. What are you going to do? Jackson watched Amelia across the room, laughing at something Gabriel said. She looked radiant, completely at ease, finally visible in the way she deserved. I have no idea, he admitted, but I know I cannot let her walk out of my life thinking that what I did tonight represents who I really am. And who are you really? Thomas challenged. Jackson did not have an answer. For years he had defined himself by his wealth, his success, his ability to control every situation. But standing here, watching the woman he had underestimated surpass him in every way, he realized he did not actually know who he was beneath the arrogance and privilege. The transformation the dinner proceeded with Jackson seated at his assigned table, barely tasting the 5-star cuisine. He watched Amelia throughout the meal, seeing her in a completely new light. She was charming without being flirtatious, intelligent without being condescending. She asked thoughtful questions and listened carefully to answers. People leaned in when she spoke, drawn by her natural warmth and genuine interest. This was the woman who had managed his entire life for 4 years. The woman he had spoken to every single day, yet never really heard. When dessert was served, the charity auction began. Gabriel bid on and won a week at a private villa in Tuscany, then immediately gifted it to a children's hospital fund, a gesture that earned him applause and admiring glances, particularly from Amelia. Jackson felt jealousy burn in his chest. Not the petty jealousy of competition, but something deeper. The painful realization that he had lost something he never knew he wanted until it was too late. After the auction, guests moved to the museum's Great Hall for dancing. A live orchestra played standards from the golden age of jazz. Gabriel offered his hand to Amelia, and they moved to the dance floor together. Jackson watched them, feeling hollow. "You should cut in," Richard suggested. "It is not too late." "I think it is," Jackson replied. But as he watched Amelia dance, he made a decision. Whether it was too late for anything personal or not, he owed her a genuine apology and real change. She had spent 4 years being invisible because she needed to be. He had spent 4 years being blind because he chose to be. That was going to change. Starting now. The apology when the song ended, Jackson approached the dance floor. Gabriel had just stepped away to take a phone call, leaving Amelia momentarily alone. "May I have this dance?" Jackson asked, offering his hand. Amelia hesitated, then accepted. They moved on to the floor as the orchestra began playing a slower number. For a moment they danced in silence. Jackson was acutely aware of how close they were, how perfectly she fit in his arms despite the high heels that brought her almost to his height. "Amelia, I need to say something, and I need you to really hear me." She looked up at him. "Waiting, I was cruel tonight. Not just thoughtless or careless, but deliberately cruel. I invited you here, planning to humiliate you for my own entertainment. That makes me a terrible person, and I am genuinely ashamed." "Deeper than tonight," Jackson continued. "For 4 years I have treated you as if you were invisible. I never asked about your life, your thoughts, your dreams. I took all your hard work for granted and never once thanked you properly. I was so focused on building my empire that I forgot the people building it with me were actual human beings with their own lives and value." Amelia listened, her expression softening slightly. You have been the most competent, reliable, intelligent person in my company, Jackson said. And instead of recognizing that, instead of promoting you or challenging you with appropriate work, I kept you as my assistant because it was convenient for me. I wasted 4 years of your life because I was too selfish to see what was right in front of me. Why are you telling me this? Amelia asked. Because you deserve to hear it. And because tomorrow morning, I am going to start making real changes. Not because I expect forgiveness or because I think it will fix anything between us, but because you made me see something ugly in myself that I cannot unsee anymore. The song ended, and they stopped moving, but neither stepped away. I accept your apology, Amelia said finally. But Jackson, you need to understand something. I am not coming back to work as your assistant. His heart sank, though he had expected this. I know. I have already accepted a position with William Hartford's investment firm. He offered it to me tonight. I start in 2 weeks. Jackson felt the finality of her words. She was leaving, moving on to a life where she would be valued properly. Congratulations, he said, and he meant it. They are lucky to have you. Thank you. The ending as the evening drew to a close. Guests began departing. Jackson watched as Gabriel escorted Amelia toward the exit, his hand resting gently on her back in a gesture that was both protective and proprietary. At the doorway, Amelia turned back, her eyes finding Jackson across the crowded room. For a moment, their gazes held. Jackson saw in her eyes not anger or triumph, but something like forgiveness. Maybe even a hint of sadness for what might have been. If he had been a different kind of man. Then she was gone. Out into the New York night with Gabriel Santos. Leaving Jackson standing amid the ruins of his own arrogance, Thomas approached, 2 glasses of whiskey in hand. He offered one to Jackson. That was quite a night, Thomas observed. Yes, Jackson agreed. What now? Jackson thought about the question. What now? He had built an empire, but treated people as expendable. He had wealth beyond measure, but had never valued what actually mattered. He had been given a clear mirror tonight, forced to see himself through Amelia's eyes, and the reflection was not one he liked. Now I've become someone better, Jackson said quietly. Someone who would deserve a woman like Amelia, even if it is too late for us. He raised his glass toward the doorway where Amelia had disappeared. Ah, to second chances, he said. God, to second chances, Thomas echoed. They drank, and Jackson felt something shift inside him. The arrogant, cruel version of himself that had existed for 32 years was starting to crack. What would emerge from those cracks, he did not yet know. But for the first time in his life, he was ready to find out. 3 months later, Jackson Reed's company announced a new initiative, employee development programs, profit sharing, and a commitment to treating staff as valued partners rather than disposable resources. The business journals called it a surprising change in corporate culture. Those who knew the story of that one night at the Global Hearts Charity Gala understood the real reason for the transformation. As for Amelia Montgomery Brooks, she thrived at Hartford Investments, quickly rising to a senior position where her talents were finally recognized and valued. Gabriel Santos remained a close friend and occasional business partner. Though their relationship never became romantic, sometimes in quiet moments, she thought about Jackson Reed and wondered if people could really change. She never regretted walking away that night. She had needed to reclaim herself, to stop being invisible, to remember her own worth. But she also never forgot the look in Jackson's eyes during their last dance, the moment when he finally saw her, really saw her, and realized what he had lost. Some lessons, she thought, are only learned through loss, and some transformations only happen when we are finally brave enough to be seen.